So we're here to talk about Box of Bones. It's a wonderful book written by Avy and illustrated and colored and inked by like everybody.
Everybody. Who's in here? Everybody.
Ooh, that is a nice looking book that I've never
Gorgeous.
seen.
Wow. That's an awesome
You ain't got yours yet?
I haven't either.
Mine either.
Oh.
So let me get this straight. We got a panel with like 5 of us on it, all of whom have worked on the book, and only one of us has it?
Like it.
Suspect.
That's a Bill Campbell issue as far as I'm concerned.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm
There
throwing
you go.
Shots fired.
Right. Breaking into the Capitol building, can't get books, you know.
It's just raggedy out here, man.
You know, injustice on top of injustice.
Shout out to Bill for being into the book in the first place, because this is not man. I was applying for to teach on a grad program, creative writing, and I was like, hey John, should I send like some pages from Box of Bones, because like they were looking for like different styles of writing. And John just looked at me, he's like, man, we kill a lot of white people in this book. I was like, true, my bad. I forgot about that, but yeah, we do that. So yeah, shout out to Bill for allowing us to kill a lot of white people.
Yeah, I love the nobody. Eating heads.
Well, how's it sound? Before we get too deep into the conversation about the Box of Bones rent party, I think it'd be really cool. Like he said, why don't you give us some more details about how this thing got started? Because it starts with you.
Starts with John, you know. So me and John have a friend who's actually depicted in the book, Dr. Lee Rayford Cohen. She's a professor of Africana Studies at UC Berkeley. We met at her house. This is not my first time, maybe my second or third time. No, shit, maybe this was the first time I met John. No, it was the second. Because John had did the cover for my for 2 of my books. And he was like, yo, I got this idea. And I was like, what's up? And he's like, what's this like? He's like, these creatures that like, you know, just ravage and fuck up, you know, people along racial lines. And they all live in this like box. And I think it was called like Bag of Bones or something at the time. And I was like, cool. You know, and I'm a novelist, you know, so I'm like, so what's the plot? And he's like, right? And I was like, no, you tell me. He's like, no, you tell me. I was like, okay. And so we started playing with like the idea. I thought of it as Orishas in reverse, right? That it wasn't like the retention of African diasporic knowledge for the benefit of the population, but rather the legacies of the grime and the pain and the horror that came from the slave trade and the damages that have happened since. And I was like, well, what would that look like embodied? Right. And then I was like, okay. And then I was like, okay, and then who's got that scope? Who's got that vision to see this perpetual damage done on a psychic plane, on a psychological plane, and on a physical plane, because it's a visual medium, so you got to show the wreckage. You know, and so I was like, okay, so there's a student of these dramas. And then I was like, and because it's Black people and because it's powerful, it has to be a myth. The power of Black people resides in our storytelling and in our myth making. So it was, how do I create this like funky myth that doesn't uplift, but instead actually tears apart? And so once I had that, I shot it back to John. John was like, do all of that. And I was like, okay. And so then we have, you know, the issues of Box of Bones.
So how would you, if you know, if you had to give the elevator pitch to somebody for like describing it, how would you describe it?
There's a box that contains the horror of Black racial trauma that has been traveling through time and space. And now one woman, one grad student has found the box. And once she does, she may never be able to close it again. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna give you.
Well, and what the other thing that's interesting about it, so earlier I referred to this as the Box of Bones rent party, was I remember how I came to it, right? You had already mapped it out. John was starting to do the art, and he was telling me about how he wanted to do 10 issues of a comic, and then maybe turn the first 5 and the second 5 into graphic novels. But he wanted to and release the comic digitally, and he wanted to do it all in like 4 months.
Yeah.
And I was like,
see Stacey's eyes? Those are my eyes. Do the eyes again, Stacey. Yeah, that was me. As soon as he said it, I was like, nah.
I was like, you done gone lost your mind. But then he was like, and then he asked me, he's like, well, you always talk about comic production. So him and I were talking about like, how do you do it? And I was like, you gotta like get a ton of people. like you need to have
the Wu-Tang
issue 1 through 10 all being worked on at the exact same time. And then you need to figure out how you can get everybody to do as much as possible, because the only thing you can do are finishes to make it all look like it came from someone somewhat similar or somewhat similar hands, right? And so I remember us talking about that, and he's like, yeah, I was kind of thinking about that. He started writing down lists of people and breaking it down, and I remember at some point he was like, hey Stanford, why don't you do some color flats for issue 4? And I was like, okay. And I remember getting it and doing it, and then realizing that there are all these little hiccups where, like, you know, in some of the books, the grad student was darker skinned, and then the grad student's girlfriend partner was lighter skinned, and in other books it was reversed. And like remember him talking about having, oh well, I can fix that easily. And I'm just thinking to myself as this is going on, every time it says easily, I'm just thinking, I'm just in my mind imagining the ticking of a clock as time goes by. I'm like, yep. You realize easy is still taking time.
Yeah, I mean, but it's, they say if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to travel well, travel with friends.
Yep.
And it's like, I mean, I'll talk just because Avery's here. When I saw Avery's pages, I was like, nobody else could do that. John couldn't do that, like nobody, like, and it adds, it slowed the pace of the story down so much, right? Which was so good, because as you can tell, I'm like, let's go. But Avery was able to add that, like, boop, like slow it down page by page, and I was like, okay, that worked for the narrative. Stacey had me straight motivated, because Stacey did covers for every individual issue. I don't know where they are yet. I need to see them in print. We had, I think the first one on the small single first issue we did, but those were like beautiful summaries of every chapter.
Yeah, I'll send them to you.
Yeah, because I want them in print. Like, I want posters.
Oh, yeah, me too. Yeah.
Those shits are beautiful.
Me 3.
Yeah, we should definitely have a Box of Bones exhibition.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Process sketches, posters, this conversation maybe, it's so easy to do. And this would be an amazing exhibition and panel discussion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And it was the all-star hitters, you know what I mean? Like, it was the Williams brothers, like with the Vietnam one, like that, it's not my favorite, but it's my favorite, you know what I mean? Like, everybody has their, Brian Moss, like, stuff, like, everybody had their own style. And rather than trying to do that, like, I mean, look at how many different versions of Wolverine there are out there, just visually. How many different visual versions of, like, Luke Cage or Superman, right? We've got a lot of those different visions like in one place, and like it's not disruptive. So I think that's an accomplishment. Oh, there he is himself.
Yeah.
John Jennings.
We were just taking his name in vain, weren't we?
All kinds of things.
Let me
All over the place.
change my background. I'm sorry.
Well, you adjust your background. Avy, why don't you tell us about how you came to Box of Bones? Give us your story.
Well, I received a phone call from John, and he was giving me the elevator pitch that you were telling earlier, Easy, and he knows that I love horror, so he right away got me with blood and guts and let's kill some people because and he just described it as almost like a math problem that I needed to figure out because he needed everyone to submit the line work and the inks, but do it in a way so that it could be finished by him. And so you needed to, normally I don't work that way. I finish the color and the inks myself. So just that challenge in and of itself was like something I wanted to take on. But then you add on the elements of the African mythology that we're talking about, the trauma, the Black pain too. And then the historical part, the research that I needed to do for my chapter, that all kind of tied in. And just the conversation we had about horror in general as fans. I remember being on a break at work and sitting in the parking lot talking on my phone and just people thinking I'm crazy because I'm having this animated one-way conversation about, oh yeah, I just loved in The Exorcist when her head spins around and she vomits and add in stuff, practical elements of horror that has never been seen before. And so that whole conversation, I don't know if you remember that conversation, John, where we talked initially on the phone.
I mean, vaguely, so many.
Yeah,
but yeah, that sounds like something that would have happened though.
And that's what got me jazzed. That's what juiced me up to get me involved in the project. And I just remember, like I said, the challenge of doing historical comics, but historical horror comics and war scenes and body parts flying all over the place. It's
a lot. I mean, your chapter is there's a lot.
And I remember saying, how graphic, how grotesque can I make this, John? He's like, go for it.
Just go with what you feel.
You said I can add more blood?
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
awesome.
One of the stickers I do.
That's so good.
That's so dope.
Oh, those are great.
Alex, why don't you give us your story, your Box of Bones intro story?
Sure. Well, I've been working with John and Stacey since I was in college because I was a student of John, and I saw Stacey around because we were at SUNY University at Buffalo. And so I just got used to getting roped into projects like out of the blue. Like I just get a call from like John. He's like, so we got this project. I'm like, okay. And he's like, and it's due in 3 weeks. I'm like, great. So I've always like kind of like dove in and just kind of like had to like make sense of everything because I feel like everything can sometimes be like very piecemeal, which is exciting at times, but also like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know, but there's a lot of blood and I'm into this. So because I'm also a big horror fan. And I swear every time me and John talk, he's like, you like horror, right? I was like, well, yeah, I've drawn like very, very grotesque pages by now. I should have figured you'd realize that I'm a big fan of horror. But my role in this, I'm a flatter. So I do like the base colors, set like color palettes for like the chapters. And I did 3 chapters, chapter 2, chapter 5, and chapter 8. All different like artists. So that was really cool being able to get a glimpse of how the art styles would vary throughout this series. And it was just nice to be able to bring like a unique touch to every single chapter and not be like confined by strict guidelines. So it was a lot of fun.
But you color chapter 5.
Yes, chapter 5 was like one of my first issues that I've worked on of all the projects that I was able to do final colors and add like atmosphere and other effects to kind of give it that 3D element that I don't usually get to dabble with doing flats all the time. So,
Stacey, give us your tale
John might have to remind me. You know, I think it started from the, you know, kind of from the beginning. You know, I remember hearing those stories about this is the basic idea of the box, and this is what's happening with the grad student and opening the box. I was sold on it. And I don't know, I might make up this history. I don't know if John and I had a conversation about me drawing an issue or not. And
yeah.
Okay. So somehow that did not work out, why, you know, which is great. But I was able to do covers, and I was in a zone of doing these collages, these digital collages, and I was knocking them out really quickly. And John said he wanted me to do the covers on a book, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah.
So my approach to that was to pay homage to some of my favorite collage artists with every cover. So one cover is there's Dave McKean in there. So if you look at all the covers, you'll see Dave McKean in there. You'll see Romeo Bearden in there. You'll see Njadika Akinyele Crosby, if I pronounce her name correctly. You'll see John Jennings in there, right? You'll see Betty Sayre in there, right? So with every cover, I tried to pay homage to a particular artist that was an influence to me. And with that, I tried to reimagine how John drew each of the box's inhabitants, right? So using photo collage, right, to duplicate this drawing, the approach became very eerie, very scary, very uncomfortable. And I can't front, some of my favorite collage work ever. I love looking at them. And John did a really dope image where he put all of I think they were still in process, but all the covers up together. You see all 10 of them.
Yeah.
And they look incredible. So John, before you got on, we were talking about an art exhibition maybe, and process images and covers and all of that.
Oh, no, I think that'd be really great. I mean, there's so many in progress images, even like stuff with the logo. Like when you put up that postcard on Facebook the other day, and Bill was like, I don't even remember seeing this. I was like, yeah, we were actually an entity before we joined Rosario. So we were just trying to figure out what to do with the project, and so it's been a really interesting amount of like rediscovery of the story, too. So that's really cool. We had stops and starts. Some certain people who were supposed to be on projects that dropped off of them. It was just, it was wild. That process should be documented, I think. So I agree with that.
Yeah, I just remember like it's not just the conversations, but I remember like there were conversations that were happening between people, and everyone was in motion, right? Because it was in a very condensed period of time. I remember getting a call from John about it while I was doing this 65-mile bike ride, and just like here I am riding my bike in the middle of nowhere, and it's freaking hot. And I'm talking to John about Box of Bones, right? And it's like the music goes away. And instead of having the music to keep me going, I got monsters killing people keeping me going, or
and
being in the car.
Trauma, what kind of Black trauma you want to engage with? It's a smorgasbord of pain and death.
Yeah.
So it's like, yep.
The only one that was uncool was it was at the tail end of a ride, and I had mistimed it, and I was literally riding home in the dark.
Oh.
I could only see with my little bike light. I'm riding home in the dark, crossing over back into the city from the south side. And I didn't tell you this, John, but I was like freaking out because it's like I'm riding and I'm like you're discovering death and trauma and things falling out of trees, and I'm looking at the trees around me like, oh, okay.
Yeah, see, it would be perfect if the burden had like just kind of
right. I was like, there might be some pickaninnies.
Because the burden is it's like a demonic inchworm with slave parts. So it's like it's It's not Jesus, actually.
Right.
But what was the experience like for everyone else in terms of like these conversations? I mean, how would you sum up the experience of doing something like this with so many moving parts in such a short period of time, you know, in 50 words or less?
I just gotta chime in on that such a short period of time thing, just because this has been going on since 2000 and I'm gonna say 14.
Yeah.
Right. So there have been, you know, it's like birth, right? It's like labor. Like sometimes like you gotta push, and sometimes you just gotta wait.
Right.
You know, and so like for me, it was like, okay, get this done. And I'm like, cool, I wrote this stuff down. And then it's like years. Right? Like literally like years. And then it's like, and I'm thinking I'm done. They're like, oh no, you gotta do this. And I'm like, motherfucker, I had like 3 years. Like you could have told me earlier. I would needed 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, but y'all playing with me now, right? And then I'm like, all right, it's all done. When's it coming out? They're like, okay. I'm like, that's not an answer to the question of when it's coming out. Don't say that. Right? And it's just like,
that wasn't my fault.
Right? No, not fault. But I really think of it as like anything, like when like giving birth. It's like there's contractions and then there's time to relax. And it's like, you know, luckily I'll say we were free from the burdens of capitalism in that like it got to be like the birth came when the birth came.
Right.
You know, it comes
right.
and it's not, you know, we may not make a lot of money off of it, but it'll be a beautiful book, and like, you know, beautiful things can happen with it. So,
I think I remember I did the first cover, I want to say in 2016 or 17. I remember I think I just started this new teaching position. Right. And I just found a cafe. And I was like, okay, I had to find a cafe to work at because that's where I get the dopest work done at. And I finally found one I could like kind of dive into this. And I remember I did that first cover and I'm like, this is so ugly. Nobody is not like, if the nobody, you know, somebody took a photograph of the nobody is not pretty. No. You know, like these are not pretty monsters, right? Like they're hideous. And I'm used to, in a particular way, making pretty things.
Right.
And this was a challenge for me. It's like, I didn't enjoy looking at it. I love the collage aspect and the monster and all of that. But I was like, I don't want to kiss the nobody.
Right? But it wants to kiss you.
But it wants, right.
And not let go.
Right.
Yeah, because it doesn't. It actually, like, once it takes your head, it just goes. It just disappears, you know? And it's funny because Ayize was like, and it should spit fire. And I'm like, okay, I don't know.
Right. Like, oh, we breathe fire.
You breathe fire? Okay. So that was hilarious. No, it's funny because with that first cover, I remember, you know, showing it to Nana Reeve, you know, the horror writer. And so, you know, Stacey had put this yellow bow on it. And so she's like, the yellow bow is the thing that actually sent Nana Reeve over the edge. She was like, no, everything else is fine, but the yellow bow, no.
That bow.
Too much.
That bow, yeah.
Hilarious.
And the lips are red, right? Like it's the red lips. Like
no, it's just overtly, yeah, that's some of the most disturbing designs I've ever like come up with, you know. Yeah, and I think really well
nobody what's the other one with the red lips? It's not the nobody.
Oh, you're talking about the tree that we have a sentient lynching tree called the Wretched is what it's called.
The Wretched. Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm gonna confess that writing the dialogue for the pickaninnies of the Wretched was probably like I was giggling like a demonic little fiend.
It was terrible because I was like, oh my God, can you imagine? This is some of the most racist, like uncomfortable language.
But like I have to say, because like I can't tell this story anyplace else, but like when I was a kid, I used to go to the movies by myself all the time. And I don't know what Disney was thinking, but when I was 7 or 8 years old, they decided to re-release Song of the South.
Right.
So my dumbass goes and watches it. My mom is like former Black Panther, super militant, super political. I'm coming home, walking in the house, literally singing zippity doo dah, zippity a.
Oh my God.
And my mom, like, she didn't stop me. She just looked at, she was like, what, like, what, who took you, like, who took over my supposedly revolutionary son? And I was like, part of the South, Mom. She was like, these motherfuckers, you know?
Like, ah,
The mouse got him.
Right?
Got him.
So I channeled all of that into those little pickaninnies of just like the shock of like taking on that slave persona, you know, like willingly, you know, or like it like taking over in a way that the person can't control, and then what you're left with is this caricature of black.
It's messed up. It's actually a really messed up issue because I mean, like I remember reading like the part where like the first time that because the wretched actually turns you into stereotypes,
right?
Eternally, because that's what a stereotype, you know, is about fixity, right? So what it'll do is it'll drag mostly white people into a tree and turn them into pickaninnies, and they're enslaved by the tree. And like the one part where like you know, this white man, this racist white man is, you know, who's participated in a lynching, by the way, gets dragged into the street, and you see him becoming, you know, slowly like morphing into a pickaninny, and then at the end he says, "I am a man," before he fully becomes, you know, the pickaninny. There's a lot of not rightitude in there. Yeah, it's like that should not be in a book, you know. So it's like, yeah, it's just yeah. I think it's really I'm really proud of those stories, but it's horror for real, and it comes from a place of like, you really haven't seen these things. This isn't Blackula. I love Blackula, but this ain't like black vampires. This is like, you know, manifestations of, you know, black trauma reified, you know. Yeah.
So I don't know what year I started. I think 2016, maybe 2017, and I believe that was right around the Charlottesville protest where they ran over the young lady in the car, and subsequently there were so many allies, and I say that like allies that wanted to help in the comics field and make anthologies to fundraise. And I remember reaching out to one group, and I just being, I mean, people call me Professor X because I'm not militant, but you know, I know what I know, and I stand up. And I didn't see any artist of color in decision making or lead design, you know, positions. So I asked the group, you know, are there black and brown people in charge of any portion of this anthology that you're putting together? And they actually got really mad and kind of didn't block me from the group, but I didn't get any real correspondence back. So the answer was no, obviously. And so I ended up making a zine about allyship and a zine about what it really means to, you know, prioritize black and brown voices. And I think that wouldn't have come about if I wasn't involved in this project where we talk about and blatantly talk about racial history and stereotypes and overcoming trauma. And it put me in a headspace where real lived experiences sort of meshed at the same time as creating this book, this comic, with what was going on in our world politically. And so it gave a voice to me to start doing personal zines that talked about microaggressions and racial discrimination. So I found it an interesting timing for me personally, because I was, you know, at the same time experiencing not necessarily trauma, but some conflicts within our own community too, racially, and just some ally and bias and what all that really means. And then we still battle or deal with that today, but I found it interesting timing wise for me personally. So
shout out to Avy for whenever there's an issue to make a zine about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got the zine. It's called "What Did You Just Say to Me?"
Yeah, no, I totally remember it. It was tight.
Yeah, just had to do it.
So I mean, I think that's one of the other things that's really interesting about how when we work on a project like this, right? When you get, especially when you get a large group of people working on a project, the type of things that spin off of it. I mean, what were some of the other spin-offs for the rest of y'all from this?
including
as in work that came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I think this was, for me, I don't think I got necessarily any spin-off work. I'd have to really think about that. But I will say this was fun. If I could think of spinning off as in this was a new direction, the type of work I was making, the type of collage, thinking about it as a series like this, like it gave me a brand new direction of thinking about how I was collaging in ways that I still haven't fully explored yet. So it's enhanced my exhibition practice in a very different way.
Yeah, particularly something like the Luke Cage work you did, for instance.
Oh, that exactly. Yep, exactly.
Alex, how about you?
I don't know if it necessarily like influenced some of the work I've done, but like I guess just being exposed to the kind of work we do under this collective really inspired me to like pursue working on other projects and creating my own work that is inspired more by like Black perspectives. And even if it's not just kind of sourcing from history, it's being able to create like characters that talk about like traumatic experiences or are more open to it when you don't get like those diverse characters because they've been written by people who aren't of color. And so you get a lot of like, you know, shells of like a Black person, but like, oh, well, why hasn't like Storm talked about someone like trying to touch her hair or something? Like, it's not a realistic like experience. And so that's kind of like what I started doing with my own work, to be like, I was even just talking to my friend last night where we were like, this is a Black woman trying to be in a man's world. There's gotta be like, you have to talk about the female experience in that perspective. So I really like enjoyed being able to see like these stories told without censorship. And I felt like, you know, really empowered to do the same with my own work.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think Ayize knows how to censor. When it comes
I love it.
Like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
It's gonna be straight no chaser every time.
Listen, man, if you put me on a Marvel or DC book, you'll find the censorship. But you give me the Bill Campbell, Mr. The Day the Klan Came to Town.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Town.
I mean, look, I mean, while we're doing this, you know, no offense to Marvel, but you know, at one point they were proposing characters named Snowflake and Safe Space.
What are you
talking about diversity, right? So I'm like, nah, you want to uncut, like, here it is. You don't like that? Come up with something better, or hire me to come up with something better. Right. But don't sit there and be like, it's not out there. Don't sit there and be like, we don't know what it looks like. Don't sit there and be like, we can't find it. Bruh, like, we're here. We're here and we're doing it. So now it's on them. You know what I mean? Like, it's my spinoff, and spinoff is like, shoot. Like John Jennings and Damian Duffy, before this, their project was an Octavia Butler piece. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So now I'm in that company with Stacey Robinson and Avy Jetter, like all these cats. Like everything I do from this point is spin off. Mm-hmm. You know, like it's just, I say we just keep making great art, maybe a little faster. You know, maybe try and get some money, but I think this is just, for me, Box of Bones is a launching point. I mean, right before the end of the year, John and I were talking to somebody about pitching an animation for Box of Bones. You know, I'm hoping that still comes to fruition. But, you know, I'm still grinding on Box, and, you know, there's book 2. There is another book.
There's another book, exactly. Yep, yeah. Which we're going to get out for. And actually, Avy's chapter is the lead off for that volume, actually. So.
Yeah. Ooh, exciting.
Yep. Chapter 6, as I recall. So
yeah, I was wondering, can we take a moment like to shout out to other artists and contributors to the book that aren't here? I'm trying to think of.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you got people like, well, it's funny because a funny Box of Bones story is Tommy Nguyen, right?
Oh yeah.
Tommy was supposed to be the artist on issue number 2, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'll do it in like 2 weeks."
Yeah. Well, you've never made a comic before, right? Before
really, you gonna do a comic book in 2 weeks? Okay. Real? You know how long it's like 20-30. It's like 20. It's a story for real. You know, you're not just making like, you know,
Like one
That was
image.
funny.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. So actually, it's funny because in that particular issue, there's that chapter. There's pieces from his original drawings and stuff, but he just basically he's like, this is a lot of work.
Tapped out.
Yes, they are. Yeah, so people like Soul Rebel actually worked on the second chapter.
David Brame?
Huh? Damien
David
Duffy.
Brame?
David Brame, actually, David Brame did like the last 3 issues, you know, which we've been sitting on. I've been debating about that too, because it's like coloring it, you know, in order to get it finished faster, like should we, you know, I really want to take my time with coloring those images, but also want the book out. So that's the thing. So we may have to come to, but David Brame like murdered those pages and actually helped design, you know, update some of the designs of the original characters, you know, as far as like how they feel on the page, you know. Tommy Nguyen actually came up with the final design of the Wretched, you know, just by accident. You know, it's, you know, gave him what I thought the Wretched should look like. He's like, no, it should probably look like that. And I was like, oh, that's much worse. Thank you. That's way worse.
Didn't Damien come through and finish an issue 2?
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, Damien was extremely instrumental in finishing up issue 2. And then, of course,
The twin.
you know, we actually had a barrier colorist like Anthony Moncada, but also, oh yeah, Jarmel and Jamal Williams. They, you know, tag teamed the twins. They tag teamed on the Vietnam story. You know, killed it. So
I'm trying to think. Did Barrington work on anything? Barrington
Edwards actually drew chapter 7. Actually, we had two artists who like just totally bailed us. That's one of the things too. It's like when you don't have like a lot of money to put up, you know, to pay people, and you're just going on like faith, and you're trying to figure out how to make ends meet, you know, because honestly, like a lot of the payment from this just came from like just you know, state of California for real. So it's like just trying to figure out how to get people you know, taken care of. Still trying actually in some way. So like yeah, so it's a lot of work to put together teams. The other thing too is like the writers, you know, people who wrote essays like Maisha Wester, who else is in this book? Susanna Morris. And I'm forgetting the other 2 sisters right now who wrote the 2 pieces. They're gonna murder me, you know. But yeah, but there's been a lot of interest in the book, you know, from various standpoints.
Did Solomon do a color?
Oh, and Francis! Oh my God, Francis Odell.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did Solomon do colors on that work? On anything?
Did Solomon color some of these? I think no. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't think he did. Not for this one. But yeah, so. Yeah, Anthony Moncada, and also our letterer, Damien Duffy, like he lettered the first issue, and then like the rest have been lettered by this brother out of Barbados named Jeremy Marshall. So he lettered the rest of it, yeah.
Shouts out to Anthony Moncada. Today's his birthday.
That's right, today is his birthday. Need to give him,
yeah.
He actually colored chapter 4.
Yeah. Man, I gotta see this book. Oh, let me see the size of it. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 6x9. It's like trade size, which is pretty cool. So,
oh, really? Okay. All right.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's nice as you can smell all the ink on it. Gotta send y'all copies, so you know.
Right.
Well, I gotta get
Amazon mine.
I gotta get addresses and stuff. You know, I'm terrible. I need a personal assistant.
You're responsible for sending them out.
It's the wrong. It's a wrong. I'm not responsible for sending them out. I'm responsible for getting people's addresses.
Oh, got you. Okay.
Bill is sending everything out. First, the Kickstarters went out first, because it's paid for by Kickstarter. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's a group project. Like, I think I forgot how much we raised for this book to get it made. I think it was like
14.
Huh?
14, 15, something like that.
I think it was more than that. You know?
Yeah. It was a successful Kickstarter.
Yeah, we got really lucky.
I think that one of the things that is really interesting, it's one thing I think is interesting about comics in general, but this book in particular is the rent party aspect, is that in order to make it happen, it's, you know, it's like what we talked about earlier, you know, John wanting to come out with essentially 10 comics in a month, right? It's actually, you know, if you did them if you did everything one after the other, like if one person sat down and said, I'm going to write it, then I'm going to pencil it, then I'm going to ink it, what would happen is a comic could easily take 45 to 60 days, like a simple floppy comic, and so the reason why comics have the production process they do, where they divide it up, where you have a penciler and inker, is so the penciler can finish some books, and while the penciler is working on the last 10 pages, the inker can be inking the first 10 pages. So you're essentially folding the process in on itself. And in this instance, we had separate people doing separate people doing the artwork, separate people doing the inks, and then the color flats, and then the finished colors. And what I find, what's intriguing about that, what people don't realize, is when you get a group that big, it's like you do at some point start to become better than the sum of your parts, right? It's like you'll have these beautiful pages, but there might be something that was forgotten in there, or something that was done a little that doesn't quite work, right? And that happens in all comics. That's not a knock on the artist, because as an artist, if you're doing 6 panels a page and there's 20 pages, that's a lot of artwork. So there are little things. And so what happens? Like the people who are doing color flats or finished colors or inks, they're not just doing that. They are taking whatever they have, and they also have an editorial function, right? Like you might have a color flatter or an inker altering the art, right? And some of the alterations have nothing to do with the quality of the work, have something to do with the fact that you have issue 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all being made at the same time. So I mean, I remember thinking about like moments where John would have to call me or someone else and say, hey, can you change that to make it work with what's coming next? It's those types of things, and that's also where you get the benefit of, instead of 1 or 2 people making innovations, you have the benefit of 15, 20 people making little mini innovations, and it makes it better as a whole. And I think that's also what's really interesting about bringing everyone together, right? Because I'll be honest, this is the first time I've met Alex, right? Avy and I know of each other, but we've never really spoken. And so like we worked on this project together, and we're seeing each other, meeting each other for the first time.
That's wild. I was going to say 2 horrible people, because we forgot Brian Christopher Moss. The hell is wrong with us?
Oh, my dude.
What the hell is wrong with us? Anyway,
edit him in much earlier.
Yeah, no, I know, right? Edit him in earlier. The other thing too is a spin-off thing, because you're talking about this process, Stanford. I think this book actually to a certain degree, Kindred in this book made me realize that actually I could probably be an editor or like a project manager. You know what I'm saying? Because even though this has been, because we brought it home. We have the first diverse volume. It's dope. And I think, honestly, if I hadn't been working on Box of Bones and Kindred, then I don't think something like Am Alfonso Jones would have been possible, right? As far as like just taking over as someone who was kind of funneling the work, So yeah, so that's, for me, I think was the important part, was like, okay, now I realized that, I could probably have some, some sense of how to manage a project, sometimes.
It's also got to be kind of hard, John, because in a process like that, you're shifting from doing everything yourself, right, to letting other people do stuff. So there's got to be a lot of letting go and having faith in people that you weren't used to.
Yes, and on some chapters that bit me square in the ass. It really did. Like, oh, so you're not gonna? No, you didn't draw that.
You're not gonna draw the panel that I usually describe right there. You're going to do your own thing.
You're gonna change the way that the character looks. Okay, all right. Well, that's not gonna work. So it's like, it was kind of stuff like that, and then also.
So you mean to tell me this whole chapter takes place in a snowstorm?
Right.
Like that issue of Alpha Flight.
Right. And I'm looking at, I'm like, did I write Snowstorm? I didn't write Snowstorm.
Yeah, so stuff like that that's difficult, and then also like letting go, you're out of control, and actually really being honest about what you can do and what you can't do. And I'm going through that now with Megascope, where it's like, all right, I'm used to doing the pitches for things, but now, you know what, I really can't. So I actually have an assistant editor, Jasmine Joyner, God bless her, who's like, you know what, I'm going to do an intervention and I'm going to stop you because I can. I'm like, all right then. Okay. So it's kind of like, okay, Yeah, it's hard. So, because you want to be great, you know what I'm saying? You want to be great. You wanted it to be the thing that you've seen in your head, you know? Yeah. What's really interesting too is like when we first started working on Box of Bones, it was actually called Shadowbox at first.
That's what it was.
Called Shadowbox. And then there was only one beastie. It was only the dark. That's it. And then we just started creating more of them. And it was Ayize's idea to actually make it global, to make it of the diaspora. Because at first I was just thinking about it being just in the, you know, the US from a perspective of African Americans. And then he was like, no, let's look at it as a global experience. And I was like, whoa, that's actually way better. So, yep. So he, you know, made it more complex. Thank you. So it's like,
What I do.
now it's better.
I'll say, like, for me, it was, you know, there were some issues that were like, I just wrote, you know, page 1, panel 1, full description, full dialogue, rah, 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 rah. And then there's other ones where I just like described a page or described a panel and then got it back for dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Marvel method.
Yeah, the Marvel method, which I actually really liked because I got inspired by what I was seeing coming back.
That's right.
Half the time, I didn't know who was doing what issue.
Right, exactly.
So I didn't know what to expect. So I was like, oh, snap. Oh, I did do that. Oh, okay. Oh, they put that in there. Oh, okay. And then it was like this other puzzle of like, okay, how do I make the dialogue sort of match what's going on? Mm-hmm. So it was, I loved it. Like, I loved working with different people's styles and not being the arbitrator of the vision, right. You know, like not being like, this is my vision. Nah, it's like, this is our vision, right? Like, I feel like that's, like I was saying before, liberated from capitalism, you know, which is like, you know, there's one author, there's one director, it's like, nah, like we're all doing this together. And yeah, there's some growing pains, but when that works, it's beautiful.
No, I totally agree. It's funny too, because people get really into it. Like my wife Tawana, she was like, we should do tarot cards. We're actually working on tarot cards. We got to get back to that project, but
yeah, man.
Solomon Williamson, right?
Yeah, he did an entire, like, they have to be edited because Solomon's mind just goes off in a different so they have to be like brought in to be a set. But you know, we're working on those. You know, that's and that's something that, you know, he contributed and was paid for, and you know, we got to finish up. So yeah, so people get really invested. I think honestly, hopefully, you know, once we finish up the character Bible thing, I guess for the animation piece, hopefully that can jump off. But also, I really want to do like illustrated fiction with these characters too, like just basically like short stories with, you know, so, you know, I think shifting the type of story that we do can actually get out more Box of Bones stories, you know, and Ayize is a wonderful prose writer, so we should probably, you know, do like an anthology of some kind, you know, and yeah, it's just future projects, but finish the second volume first.
Would we get backstories of like the monsters and how they came to be in the Box of Bones?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that actually kind of happens a little bit in the second volume, but you know, what's really cool about the stories is that, you know, this box has been around for a very long time and all kinds of people have interacted with it. So that's the thing. So it's really an evergreen story. You know, it's really an evergreen artifact, you know. And of course,
monsters come from happy places?
No.
What? Happy,
dark, scary, smelly places.
What's happy? What does that mean? Is there a Q in that word? What you mean happy?
See, I'll be honest. One thing that I think would be cool would be like actually telling stories about how the monsters relate to each other, right? Yeah. Like which monsters are best friends?
I don't know. I don't know if that's okay.
You know, Pixar's monsters, man. It's a different thing.
Hey, so we ain't talking about Sesame Street monsters. You know
no, not as Sesame Street monsters, but there's some monsters in there that seem like they'd be super compatible, and others would just be like they just tear each other apart. So I always, you know, because we always think of monsters as being these things out there. They're these individual things that come out at you, but they exist in an ecosystem, and in any ecosystem there are relationships.
You're talking about like something like Cabin in the Woods. Like,
yeah,
right. You know, those monsters, they could not exist together, right?
But
had to be
isn't there a chapter, I think it's chapter 8, that you see like what was it, the burden and the wretched both in a panel, so they were like kind of like teaming up.
I don't want to give away too much, but yeah, all of them come out like, yo, it's a smorgasbord of pain. Let's get at it. You know, like it's bad. Yeah, it gets
be like, yo, homie, you take the head, I'll take the ribs.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Well, it's true. They collect different body parts at times, so it makes sense.
Definitely like the burden does. Like, yeah, it's right, because like the nobody takes head, the burden is like, I'll just take everything else.
Right. So they eating white people from the rooter to the tutor.
White and black alike.
Oh my God.
Equal opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
People chitlins.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's just all kinds of wrong.
This is why this book is so messed up.
Exactly. Obviously,
2 minutes in it, we like people chitlins.
People chitlins. That should not be a thing. Oh my God.
And do they use hot sauce?
From multiple worlds. It's like
that's the scene I want to see. I want to see the monster come out and like right before he eats the person, pull the bag out with the hot sauce.
There you go.
Where's my crystal?
With the shimmy. You gotta do the shimmy.
They gotta be in like Beyonce drag though.
Oh my God.
Hot sauce, my bag, you know what I'm saying?
Oh.
And an HBU cardigan. Yep.
You hear the drum majorettes in the background, the drums.
Yep. Anyway, let me stop. That's just
drum line.
Y'all stupid. Anyway. No, but it's a lot of wild stuff in there, and it's gonna get wilder. I mean, yeah, Barrington went in on the origin story. I mean, honestly, that's one of the most difficult ones to deal with, because I was thinking about that today. I was like, I think I found the best way to color it, because I wanted it to look like it was printed on like parchment paper or something. It has a very old feel to it. I think I've got it together, but because I didn't want to mess with his pencils. His pencils are so beautiful. I was like, well, can I augment them so they don't get covered up by just my stupid inks? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, it's hard, you know. And then, you know, Avy's is raw. I mean, I feel like Avy's work feels like, you remember those old printings of like Vlad Dracul from back in the day, like Dracula when he was like putting people on pikes and stuff, you know? That's what, when I saw those, that's what your drawings feel like, historical documents of like people being tortured.
Well, I really love those old 20s black and white movies, so that's a huge compliment.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what they feel like. So if you ever look at like, oh, you know, that woodcut of Vlad Tepes, like looking at people being like skewered on pikes while he drinks his wine. You ever seen those drawings?
That's not wine, dude. That's not wine.
Oh yeah, blood. Sorry.
I vaguely remember that.
That's what they remind me. They feel like someone like your image was burned in somebody's head, and then they turn them into woodcuts and print them onto like parchment paper. That's what they feel like. That's kind of like how I'm handling the coloring. I want them to feel like they were printed like by a monk who's like traumatized by what he saw. That's essentially what it is. I mean, like you know, the way that Ayize wrote it, it's like she's in a monastery reading an account of what happened, right? So I'm thinking like these images like were printed by monks, you know, who survived the attacks. So, and Alex, that's another one where like all the monsters come out and they're like, yo, they're gonna eat your head.
When you talk about making an animation, did you think soundtrack? Because I immediately, when we were just talking, I could totally hear like Method Man, I Bring the Pain, like just all these hip hop songs that could be played with the animation. And I'm a huge hip hop head, so did you have any of those thoughts in your mind when you talk about making animated?
Yeah, I put a soundtrack for every episode, and it was actually a lot of like kind of like Abeyi or like Princess Nokia, sort of like women of color who've got that hip hop vibe, but also that like international, like I call them like, you know, the little Santeria girls. Like when I see them like dressed in all white by the ocean, I just walk away because I'm like, y'all doing that female magic shit, that's gonna fuck me up. So let me just, you know what I mean? I'm like, there's a woman's space, I respect that. Please don't fuck with my shit, I'm over here, you know what I mean? So I put a lot of that in there, but there was definitely some like a little boom bap in there as well, you know?
Crazy. Kind of like Tony Todd when you see him in a movie, you know something horrible is gonna happen.
You know? Yeah. You know, funny story about your episode, your issue episode, issue Avery. It's actually based off of I went to Zanzibar a couple of years ago, and there was this really, really nice dude, and he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, man," he's like, "I know." He's like, "You know, it's like you're a tourist, but you're a Black. You're my brother, so I want to be good to you." I'm like, "All right, man, I'm cool." He's like, "No, no, no." He's like, "I want to show you something very special." I'm like, "What is it?" He's like, "I will show you the place where they held the slaves before they took them to the New World." I was like, "No, I'm not interested." And he was like, "No, no, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. This is the place where your ancestors were held in chains for long periods of time before they went on an impossible." I'm like, "Nah, I heard you clearly." Like, I'm not the one for that. Like, I don't need to. My man was so confused. He was like, "Wouldn't you want to see this?" And I'm like, I don't need to sit with that. You know, and I understand that some people do. I understand the Sankofa aspect. I get all of it. But I'm like, that's a place of like deep, deep trauma, right? Like, I don't need, I'm on vacation. I don't need to.
Where's my margarita?
You know what I mean? So like my thing in thinking of your issue is like, okay, imagine somebody going there and actually reading all of that and absorbing all of that. Because that's where Lindsay is at that point. She's just
she's absorbed, yes. And
give me all the trauma of the past. I'm gonna eat it.
One of my favorite things is that, you know, she's eating it, but then she starts washing it down with alcohol. And you can see slowly her depending upon like, you know, alcohol to kind of like cope, and how it starts driving a wedge between her and Hatima, you know. Yeah, it's I love it. It's a great story. So.
It was funny, the animator, the producer dude we were talking to, he was like, "Okay, so why is she an alcoholic?" And we were like, "Well, she's in academia. She's a Black woman in academia, one."
Exactly.
What are you talking about? Like, we were confused. We were like, "How come? What do you mean?"
Why would you not be?
You know.
Anyway, cool, man. So.
Well, one thing that, I mean, this has been a really great conversation. I mean, I know that we could go on, but I know that we have to wrap it up a little bit. But I'd like to hear I'd like to know to hear from you all of your final thoughts on working on this project. What are kind of the lasting thoughts, or your thoughts now? You know, I'd really like to hear that. Stacey.
I would definitely say that, you know, I think this is the second Box of Bones panel that we've done, right? Is this the second one we've done? Because the first one we did was at San Diego Comic-Con a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
And
yes.
And
how was I not on that one?
I don't know.
I have no idea. Never mind. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. No, we never.
No, I don't know. I really don't know, because, you know. I'm like,
no, but what I was gonna say was, like, this project, even then, like, the project wasn't as finished or as realized. You know, this second panel, this today feels like, I feel like we just dropped the illest album and I was not whack on it. And with sometimes when I'm in the midst of really, really dope people, like dope creators, my goal is just let me not be whack. You know what I mean? Like, let me represent well. And listening to everybody, and you know, this circle of contributors, and we shout out all the other people that were on it, I just feel like this is the most amazing project that I've ever been a part of, that is this massive and has the illest potential. As I'm listening to this, I'm like, oh yeah, this definitely is going to be a television series. Like, this will be optioned as a television series. And I just feel an honor to be a part of it, as cheesy as that might sound, but this is a really incredible, amazing project. And I'm really happy to have worked with everyone here, and, you know, so many of the people who are not here working on this project. This was a really, really dope project. And this is the type of project that we say, you know, projects that are just as good as anything that's coming out from the mainstream. This hangs like with the illest books that Vertigo might have dropped back in the day that are classics.
Murdered, better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This will be a cult classic.
Alex, thoughts? What are your final thoughts or final thoughts for now?
Sure. I just thought, again, like, it's a really great opportunity to be a part of, like, you know, this group of people and just being able to write these stories, because there's like an educational aspect of it too, because so often like history is like diluted and we get like the censored version. So I really appreciate like how dark this went and how real it was, because this is like what we all have to live with and move forward with, like in our everyday lives. And like you never see that visualized. And so that impact, like I hope it triggers empathy in people who are like not like non-Black people reading this, and like really give them something to think about, and also like help Black people feel like, you know what, these are feelings that like I don't feel crazy, because this is history just being unearthed. So it's it feels historical, and I'm really really grateful.
John.
Yeah, again, it gives me an excuse to it gives me a space where I can put like the wildness in my head, you know, which I'm really grateful for. And then, you know, I get to hang out with people that I care about and respect. Yeah, and it's a lot of love. That's the thing, it's a horrific thing, but it's just so much love in the book. You know, that's the other thing, you know, which I'm really appreciative of. So I'm really thankful that people went on this journey with us, and you know, wait till people see the rest of it. I mean, it's wow, you know, and I'm just trying to figure out how to, you know, how to make sure everything gets done on time. So, you know, so we can get the second issue out, second volume out.
Avy.
Just to piggyback on what both Stacey and Alex are saying about being a part of a bigger group, a bigger project, and wanting to do your best work, with the understanding that everyone is working together, and to build a community that John is talking about, where you respect each other's talents and everyone plays their role, and you have your part. You know, sort of like a basketball team or a baseball team, where you know who the home run hitters are, you know who the rebounders are, you know, so you know your role and you do your best. When you get in, you get your championship ring at the end. Everybody contributes, and so yeah, I look at it like that team, that dream team, that you do your best at your role and everybody takes care of business. So it's awesome that way to find like-minded, respectful people who respect each other and love what we do, enjoy what we do.
Right.
Aize, what are your thoughts?
Thoughts of Marvel and DC better start calling now, because if you're looking at, you know, folks who are doing the business and getting it done, and you're really serious about telling diverse stories, then it's like, oh, who do I call? Well, who's in the book, right? Like who's in here, right? Who's demonstrated skill? Who's demonstrated talent? Like, we in here, we've been doing this like from forever. So like get on it, and like let's get some good stories out there, you know. Like Stacey, I know Stacey has stories to kill for days. I know, like, you let him go in the Marvel and DC playbook and like watch him just blow shit up. Like, I know this. I know you give Avy some more, man. That's not even an issue. You know what I mean? So like, it's, for me, it's just onwards and upwards. You know, I got this out. You know, I got a delivery date for the last in the Liminal series. I'm working on John with a really cool like eco future, you know, version of Count of Monte Cristo off the east coast of Africa. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just producing and putting stuff out there and grinding and hopefully telling stories that continue to matter to people.
Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you for just taking the time out to converse a little, talk about Box of Bones, talk about everything. Thank you so much.
No, thank y'all.
Thank you.
I'm glad I could join too. Yeah, so thank y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Y'all are the
Good
best.
to see you guys.
Keep
All
it
right.
Box of Bones love.
We're not woo. Okay, my bad.
Right. You like.
Yeah.